Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining. We are going to get started. Today we are going to talk about getting the most out of your spaces, and we have our wonderful panelists, which we'll intro shortly. My name is Brett Hedens, and I lead solutions engineering for Envoy. I work very closely with tech partners and in the space, building against different verticals. And so I love talking about these conversations. We are going to talk about how integrations add value to anyone's tech stack and how it's great for companies like ours to be connected. So we're joined by three of our strategic tech partners to talk about space management. This roundtable discussion will give an opportunity for each one of the three to chime in as we go through the questions. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Gupta. He is the president of Butler, and I'll give him a few moments to introduce himself.
Thanks, Brent. It's great to be here and with you and the panelists. I'm Rags Gupta. I'm the president and head of business at Butler. We are an occupancy sensing company. We have a wireless thermal sensor. You can see it here, really unintrusive, and it uses heat and heat energy to be able to understand people and how they use space and interact in space. And we're also very proud to be an integration partner with Envoy. We can get into that later, but yeah, we're deployed across offices and buildings to help understand occupancy, utilization, dwell time, and a number of other analytics to help people manage and better operate their space.
Thank you, Rags. And next up, we're going to be joined by Chris Drish, and he is a global head of sales at Embrava.
Thanks, Brent, and thanks to the entire Envoy team for setting this up. Great to be here, and thanks for all the attendees for joining. Embrava is a global technology company. We help customers build smarter workspaces that support their hybrid work plans. Our flagship product is the Embrava Desk Sign. It's an intelligent signage device that dynamically displays the real-time status of a desk or room in those types of flexible workspace environments. Employees can easily book a desk or workspace via Envoy, or they can do that directly at the desk sign level per our integration that we have with Envoy. And once employees are checked into their workspace, our device displays the employee's name for the duration of their booking. We can dive into a lot of that more, but otherwise, thanks, Brent. And again, thanks to the Envoy team. Look forward to the webinar.
Thank you, Chris. And as Chris said, desk signage is an essential part of a hybrid office. Embrava's done an incredible job of providing these clean visualization of where folks need to be around the office space. So we're going to close out the intros with Chris Hobson from Luxor One, and I will give him a moment to introduce himself.
Hey everybody, Chris Hobson. I'm the general manager for our commercial products here at Luxor One. What Luxor One does is we provide smart and secure lockers for a variety of use cases. Everything from buy online, pick up in store orders, multifamily apartment package management. And then with our Envoy integration, we provide temporary storage for employees who book a desk space when they come into the office, when you have Luxor One lockers there. In addition to that, in the office space, we provide package management and secure handoff of IT assets to make it easy to know where packages, your own personal stuff, or IT devices are within an office, especially when you're sharing workspaces.
Thank you, Chris. So now that we have a solid foundation of the panelists that we're going to be speaking with today, we want to talk about the technology and customer pain points and how we can make a positive impact through the technology and these integrations across workplace managers, IT, employees when we implement these products. How does this impact our customers' real estate footprint? We are going to kick it off with Chris Hobson from Luxor One to talk on this topic.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks. So what we've seen from our customers, pain points here, as people are coming back to the office after pandemic, we've really seen two things. The shared desk use has increased dramatically. And what that's done is that's made it to where people don't know where people sit, where to bring them, laptops, where to take packages that may have been delivered. So as part of our integration here with Envoy, we wanted to try to solve some of these problems. So the first way that we did it is when you book that desk, you automatically get an assigned locker that's yours for the day for as long as you have that desk booked. So you don't have to leave your bag sitting out at your desk. You have a secure space to put it. You can go in and out at. We've heard a lot of good feedback on this feature because people have been hired during the pandemic and they've never met each other until they come back into the office now. And so when you go into a big building with a bunch of people you haven't met, right, you get concerned about the safety of your personal belongings. So, we've seen that here since we launched with Envoy last year. That people have really appreciated having that ability to keep their things secure. And that's probably it. I'll hand it back over to you, Brett.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Even before the pandemic, I wish we had lockers just to keep a secure space, because sometimes people leave materials out on their desk and it's good to lock that away. And this kind of dynamic experience that you get would have helped this if we had it years earlier. So we're going to kick the same question over to Chris Drish from Umbrava.
Thanks, Brent. And I think Chris, really nailed it. I think companies, are obviously moving to this shared workspace model and trying to figure out all the technologies that are going to make it work for their organization and their employees that they're trying to incentivize to come into the office. While they're going through a lot of that discovery, I think that they're finding a lot of common pain points for their employees. And this is really kind of leading to a negative employee experience once they're in the office. So I think focusing on those types of technologies to eliminate some of the common pain points is going to be vital to implementing a successful hybrid work model. A lot of the pain points we're seeing with customers is that as employees are coming into the office, they're kind of unclear over space availability as they're navigating the flexible office. They're having difficulty locating booked spaces. Sometimes they're finding that they're getting inaccurate bookings or people aren't showing up to reservations that they're making. And this kind of leads to challenges with employee location and employees utilizing shared spaces for extended periods of time without making a booking is causing also some issues in the office for both the managers and their colleagues alike. And all of this kind of leads into a lot of employee friction and awkward interactions around shared workspaces that they're looking to resolve and to negate across their organization. So those are some of the pain points we're seeing with a lot of our customers that are, returning to the office in a, flexible or hybrid sort of work environment.
Yeah, Chris, I couldn't agree more. I actually witnessed someone this morning a little annoyed that their desk was sat in by someone else and it was booked by them. And so real time, you watch that interaction and you just wish there was something that would let them know that they're not supposed to be sitting there. Little do people realize the small things are very helpful. So kicking it off to Regs.
Yeah, so look, Brent, I mean, I think we've touched on it already, but the last few years have seen so much change, right? Like there are companies going back to first principles of why have an office, a physical workplace? What is it there for, right? What are we trying to do there, right? So you have that kind of context. Overlapped on top of that is the fact that real estate tends to be the second largest line item on a P&L for a company, right? And so all the more reason for companies to want to make sure that that line item, that investment in real estate is the best possible investment, right? So having spaces that work for employees and work for how the new modes of working and really rethinking what the physical workplace is there for, right? So that's like a very high level view of like what, the big questions that are going on, right? Then you take another level down, which is like, okay, so what? What do I do with my space? Do I take more of it or not? We may have the same lease and it's been spec for, let's just say 80 people, But during the pandemic, we hired a lot more people remotely for the same location. So do I need less space? Do I need more space? Do I need to change the type of space I need, right? Now, it was one thing where before you expected everybody to come in 5 days a week at a desk, right? You might have had an old school time and utilization study to know how people are using it, right? You hire people, interns to come in and clipboards and clickers, right, for a week, and they give you a report, right? Well, guess what? That doesn't fly anymore, right? And so, we find that there's a growing need to have data to drive decisions and give rationales to stakeholders within a company of, hey, here's why we're swapping out these desks for soft seating, or here's why we need a different layout in the space to better use it. And that's where insights and data from systems like ours can come in to help inform those decisions. That's on the planning side. And then there's a whole piece of it to have a better experience for the employees. We talked about earlier about having ghost bookings and squatters. I think one of the panels touched on, and so that speaks very much to integrations with a system like Envoy. But yeah, fundamentally, it's making more data-driven decisions so that it's not just based on anecdote, and that's something that we're certainly seeing as a pain point out there.
Yep. Once again, I agree because I live it and breathe it every day. We had the experience of having too much office space, and then you have too little, and you need to figure out what's right. And then also it comes down to what you're paying for that space. And it's products like ours together that can paint that picture. So thanks for bringing up those points, and we'll move on. So with some of the current problems that we're facing, and we want to leverage data to make informed decisions on rationalizing or right-sizing real estate footprints, like you said, Regs, a lot of our customers are going through this right now. And with those pain points, is there anything regarding reducing the friction and also just increasing occupancy and also getting employees back into this space, kind of giving that, I would say, picture to the admin, so that you're working together to get the data points necessary to make both parts happy. So regarding those points, the data that you get from your systems, let's kick it off with Regs.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, another big sort of macro trend is really rethinking the experience of the people in the space, right? And look, frankly, making the physical office worth the commute, right? That's fundamentally what you want it to be. And that goes to we've seen things. I mean, people are experimenting with a number of different efforts, right? From the design of the space to the technology to the systems that are in there, right? So certainly on our integration with Envoy, that's around having a cleaner, more seamless experience from booking out of space to actually having that be reserved or freed up, right? We have some customers where there are desks or rooms being booked on a regular basis that people don't show up at. And so then what happens is those show up as blocked and other people can't use them, and they actually don't even come into the office that day because they see it as booked or blocked. And that's a big issue, right? And so can you use real-time presence through a sensor and connect that directly to a booking system, right? To be able to free up or block a space when that's needed. That's just one example, right? On the employee experience side. Others we've heard of are giving people a sense for traffic or how busy a space is, whether it's a canteen or a gym or places like that. And as well as neighborhoods, so big campus settings, people want to know where there's people kind of together, right? No one wants to eat at an empty restaurant, and same thing goes for empty offices. So those are some examples that we see on the employee experience side.
Yeah, and on that point about sensors and the rooms, I know what the integration does today with Butler, and Envoy is extending our APIs for the room side of it, which will give better customization. So then you could actually release rooms if no one's physically in there. And right now, again, it goes back to just empty space. And I see meeting rooms booked all the time that people aren't actually sitting in because some of those people are remote.
Yes.
kicking it off to Chris Drish on the same topic of analytics and data.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Rags did a really nice job of kind of summing up the key issues around that, and especially with employees, booking a space to ensure they have it, but not really sure if they're going to go in, and then they don't go in the office, and you might have another employee that's like, oh, Bill's sitting over there today, and they walk over and he's not there, or again, tying up those types of resources when no one's actually using them. So beyond just some of the time savings and issues with tying up resources in that manner, where you can actually make sure that doesn't happen through intelligent, devices like Rags has mentioned, with their sensors, or with desk sign physically at the space. That's going to help ensure that you understand where employees are through a given day. Are they actually utilizing their space? If they're not, that space can be released. And it's making sure that, the managers aren't getting skewed, workspace usage or occupancy data, and making, decisions that aren't as informed as they should be by utilizing technology like, our Brava desk sign or those types of sensors to really capture the true check-in and check-out events. And all of that is going to help drive, accurate workspace usage data, via Envoy. So just to piggyback that, I think Rags, really kind of nailed it, and just add a little bit more color to it from our perspective.
Thanks, Chris. And now on to Chris Hobson for the same topic.
Yeah. So I'll start with a little story here. One of the things we hear from a lot of customers when they think about putting lockers in at work is they want to know, how can they tell if there's something that's been left in the locker for too long, right? Someone leaves their lunch in there for a week. You don't want to have to deal with that as the workplace manager. So a lot of the lockers that people put in for employee lockers are, touchpad kind of on the lock itself. And so as the manager of that facility, you don't really know how long it's been in there, because most of those aren't smart. They're not connected. And you're relying upon the employee to get their stuff out on time. So one of the things that we do that we think is really important is we provide all the data in a reporting suite to anybody who has our lockers. So you can tell who used the locker, you can tell when they used it, when they last opened it, right? So you can see your capacity. So if you see your lockers are all full and you have employees complain, hey, I need to store my stuff and I can't get a locker, you can easily go and see who's had their bag in there for a week. And we always give managers access to the locker. So anyone always has, if you're one of the managers on site, you can always get into the locker to clear it out. Someone may have forgot their stuff, and there may be smells coming from it if they haven't picked their stuff up too recently. I think that's important though, right? Because if you have an asset like that in your office where people are storing things, you need to know how it's being used. You can't always just rely upon employees to treat it the way they should. Because people forget stuff, people walk away, leave their stuff in there. So we think that's important. There's a lot of automation that you could do with that, but I think we'll get into that later with one of these other topics. So thanks.
Yeah, and on that point, you could actually use the locker information to know if an employee was there or not, if they haven't gone to the locker in a few weeks and have something stored and still booked. So very helpful information, even if not the initial reason why you want to look at that data.
Yep.
So now that we've talked about the impact of optimizing your space, I want to get more into the nitty-gritty regarding the impact across people. So how does the impact of the technology impact admins, security, employees, and even visitors? What can these personas expect when working jointly to provide this workplace solution between our integrations? So Rags, I'm going to kick it to you first.
Yeah. So first, let's just sort of, I don't know if people have heard of the framework, the 330-300 framework that I believe JLL come up with a number of years ago. But that's where you look at your energy costs are about $3 a square foot, right? Your rent costs on average, right, are $30 a square foot, right? And actually your people costs, your workforce, your employees are 300. So 2 orders of magnitude higher than even energy, right? So anything that can be done to improve the experience of that, $300 number, right, actually moves the needle in a big way, right? People are the biggest line item for most companies, and so anything that technology can do to improve productivity, to improve the experience, to improve retention, can actually make a difference in the bottom line. So it's again, and that comes down to what is the type of experience, what are the type of behaviors that are going on in the office, and how do you facilitate those, right? And that's where we help with, we help our customers understand not just some of the raw numbers, but the types of behaviors that are happening in the office. And then, using that data and those insights, can they actually make changes to programming, to the layout, to the, to other things to improve the experience, right? So let's give an example, right? We have a customer where they stood up a floor plate, and it was relatively new. It was in London, and they wanted to understand how it was being used, right? And it was very clear that there were certain areas with desks that were just not being used at all, right? And some other rooms were being very heavily used, right? And so there were opportunities there to change actually the layout and essentially the experience of the people there to match it up with how they're actually using the space, right? So we get into areas like, are people just working alone at their desks or in rooms, or are they collaborating and meeting up with others, and where are those points of interaction, and can you do other things to really amplify those and then start reporting out on those?
In this example that you were giving, was there a outcome in terms of like lower real estate costs, or was that the goal or intention, or did you just end up pointing it out to them as they set up the software and kind of were using it?
Yeah, I mean, this was a new space that they had already invested in. And so, you want to get the best out of that space, right? And in fact, they had a space very nearby that they were kind of overflowing. And so the idea was, could you have this space be kind of for the overflow, right? And really what happens, overall is, we're just about to work with a customer today, actually in a few weeks, where we'll be installing our system. And very good example, right? They had an office spec for 80 people, and it's now 200. And they're getting anecdotal reports, right, of people running out of things and spaces, and they have a hunch, right? This is like, it's like they have a hunch, like, we could use this other space differently or better, right? And when we were sort of putting the business case together, given what they're paying in rent, it's something like, if we can help them better utilize like 500 square feet of space, it pays for itself, right? And so this is where the dollars and cents of real estate really get matched up with the employee experience, right? And getting that type of atmosphere where people want to come in, they know how, and you're then using that real estate investment in a really kind of meaningful way.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the key things that came out of COVID. And obviously we saw a lot of, I'm in New York, and you walked around some of the buildings and they were just sat empty. I can't say the same for today. The trains are pretty full coming into work, but it still doesn't mean the space is being used in the most strategic way. And that's what the software is giving you. So we'll come back to that one later, but I want to pass the same question to Chris Drish and Chris Hobson. So we'll start with Chris Drish on just the impact across the different personas: admin, security, employees, visitors.
Yeah, I think companies are realizing that now more than ever, the employee experience of coming into the office is paramount. I mean, they've proven out that a lot of people can work from home successfully, but that doesn't mean that they can't get the most out of in-person collaboration in the office. So they're trying to find the right sort of mix for, how often employees need to come into the office based on their roles and the types of groups they're in, and also trying to incentivize people to come into the office. And the way to incentivize, I think, their employees and increase the employee adoption of a hybrid work model that includes, a few days in the office, is by creating a really desirable employee experience when they come into the office, to ensure that they continue to want to come in the office and it's not a big headache around finding space. They want to up-level the aesthetics and the various types of spaces that employees can utilize while they're in the office. So I think, planning out all of those elements is key, and a lot of that's really focused around the employee experience, which again I believe is paramount in the process.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, even though the admins and security and everyone's kind of facilitating everything, the employee experience is the one that you're solving for, because they're the folks that are in the space. They're the ones that are happy or not at work, and that really drives productivity. And I can even see it now, being back in the office, working closely with some of the folks on my team. Something that could be a Zoom and some Slack messages back and forth for like an hour, you can solve in a few minutes. So I'm seeing the impact of it myself. So now moving on to Chris Hobson, same question, breaking it down for Luxor.
Yeah, so some of the ways that we look at the way we've done lockers is trying to solve some of the biggest pain points for admins and security. Years ago, before we had office lockers set up, we would hand out new laptops to people by putting it on their desk. Well, of course, one time one goes missing in an area that's not covered by cameras, and it's a whole big thing, right? You got our IT team trying to figure out what happened, our HR team trying to figure out what happened. And it was just an overall bad experience for everyone. And it made everyone in the office feel worried about leaving stuff out, right? So that's kind of one of the drivers of adapting our lockers for office use, was for the security times when you're handing out a high value piece of equipment and you can't literally put it in someone's hands, right? We had lockers, so we said we should put it in a locker. So we designed the software to let you securely hand off from an IT manager to an employee. You know who got it, when it was in the locker, when it was picked up, all of that. So we think that that's a big one, is using a secure space to solve those security problems. And once you start doing that and you build that into your standard process, then you never have to worry about a laptop going missing off somebody's desk again, because they're never left on anybody's desk. Similarly with some of that employee experience, not just for existing employees, but for new employees. One of the, maybe the most exciting parts is getting all of your new desk equipment, whether to put at your current desk in the office or take home with you. So the way that we do employee onboarding is the Friday before they start, everything goes into a locker. They get a notification in their new email address with their code to pick up all their new equipment. So their first day in the office, they go through their hour HR orientation, sign all their paperwork. And the next thing they do is they go to the locker, they use our Luxor One product, open it up and pick up all their stuff. So we know ahead of time they're going to have everything they need. If they're a virtual employee who's part-time in the office, right, there's no desk to put it at. So we put it in a secure locker for them to pick up. And that's actually been a huge positive on the onboarding surveys that we do. When we started doing that every single time, our scores went up. I think it was like 10%. So I've seen a lot of good benefit by just incorporating the technology into the everyday process. Not only does that make it work right because everyone knows how to use it, but you get all the benefits that you expect it to. If you just add a technology and only use it sometimes, you're probably going to spend a lot of money and not getting the benefit. And then a year or two later, you think, wow, why did I spend that money? And may not realize it was the process not changing. So.
Yeah, I can almost, it's almost like opening a new present on your first day of work, and you're eager to get in there.
Exactly.
And I definitely have worked at a few companies where the space was a little too open and I didn't feel comfortable leaving things on my desk. And that was something I had brought up like from day one. So I can empathize with that experience. One other point that I'd like to touch on with companies that you've worked with the lockers, can you speak to a couple experiences of visiting, like employees who are visiting different offices and kind of the experience of that and kind of how that has increased a more positive experience for them as they don't know the space and they have to go somewhere else and leave their belongings, potentially luggage even?
Absolutely. So I've experienced that myself, right? Like you're on your last day of a business trip and you're walking through the office with your rollerboard luggage. You feel like everyone's looking at you at all the noise that you're making. And if they don't have our lockers, I would really wish they did, because it makes it so easy, right? If you have temporary storage lockers for visitors at the front entrance, right, they can leave their stuff in there. You know, here currently we bring people in to do all-day workshops on different things. And we have Envoy set up in our office. So when they show up, they check in, it assigns them a locker. They're able to store their bags in there. And then throughout the day, if they need to go back, you know, to their purse, they can do that. So it just gives a lot of, you know, reassurance that your stuff's going to be safe. When you don't have them, right, you're either carrying all your bags with you every day, or you're asking someone who maybe you know, who maybe you don't know, can I leave my stuff at your desk? And you're hoping that it's secure. I have a tough time with trust, so I often take my stuff around with me all the time. But if I had a locker, it makes it so much simpler to do and to feel secure.
Yeah, that actually ties the kind of the experience of our integration together, because employees are using it to not only book if they're going to their own office, but book at another office. They book their desk through Envoy, and upon doing that, they're able to get the locker, and that auto assigns to them. And so it just goes hand in hand and automates the experience of the employee who's visiting. And like you said, makes it better when they get to a new office that they're not used to. So jumping into a new topic, trends in the market. And we obviously know it's been a wild 2022. I don't think things have slowed down since 2019. To me, I'm convinced they're the same year. But as you've seen, like how the market's been changing and your product's impact, what do you think customers are looking for, considering now going into this new year? And we're going to kick this off to Chris Drish.
Thanks, Brent. You know, I think what we're seeing is, you know, most companies and organizations are either seriously exploring or have already moved to a shared workspace environment. And I think they're continuing to kind of fine tune different things, like what type of shared work schedules are we doing for our employees to kind of maximize their time in the office, and looking at various groups in the organization and seeing how do we, again, try to incentivize them to come into the office to collaborate. Brent, as you had mentioned, I mean, you could, accomplish a lot in an in-person meeting versus a lot of Slack or Teams messages. And I think companies and most employees do value that time with their colleagues in person, especially coming out of the pandemic. Not meaning that would be 5 days a week, but I think companies are realizing they really need to invest in the right types of technologies that are going to support, this kind of major shift for a lot of organizations and for a wide range of employee demographics, where you've had folks that are very used to coming into the office several days, if not 5 days a week, and you have other employees that are more used to maybe this sort of hybrid work environment. So I think the biggest trend, again, is just organizations trying to figure out these flexible workspaces, and finding the right technology that's going to work best for their organization.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. One of the topics that I myself have been very I would say boisterous about is folks who are on a lot of calls, you have a lot of meetings. There are days that it makes sense to be heads down and you're just gonna be on a Zoom back to back to back. So it doesn't really make sense to be taking up a seat somewhere. But then you have those collaborative days where there's less meetings and it's the conversations go a long ways, and almost optimizing the office for less capacity, but being able to have all of those employees have their work days and experiences. And that's kind of like what we all want to solve for, which is perfect. Now passing this off to Regs, kind of what you see with your product and the sensors and kind of the different work patterns and teams that you've had to talk through with your customers.
Yeah, look, I mean, I liken it to, it's like someone just shook a snow globe and every sort of bit of snow is just like everybody's trying something different, right? With different, and it's a lot more atomized or a lot more nuanced. So it's no longer one size fits all for a company. It could be different by region, by team, even in the same building, right? Like one set of teams has assigned desks and seating, and others are hot desking or anchor desking or things like that. So there's a lot of experimentation going on, as well it should, right? Because really we're revisiting kind of, what are the right ways of working and collaborating, right? And across, kind of, our physical and at home workplaces. So I'd say, overall, there's a lot of experimentation. But then I would also say the big themes this year for the customers we've spoken to are really kind of often boiled down to three things. The first is dollars, right? How can we make the best use of our real estate investment and get the most out of it? And for some people, that means shedding space and looking to consolidate. For others, it means right-sizing it and just making the right decisions that are based on data, because there's so many dollars involved. The second is, for the people that we have, how can we get the best experience and get the most out of them, right? That's the people aspect we talked about before. And then the third is, it kind of comes down to comfort, and not just comfort, but actually carbon. And a lot of these companies have mandates around carbon or ESG or things like that. So kind of looking forward, what investments do they need to be making to be able to reduce that in the buildings and physical space that they occupy, right? So that still remains important, especially for the largest companies out there that will have to answer to shareholders in that regard.
Yeah, no, that definitely makes sense. And those, when you're at that scale, the only thing you can work off is data. It's not like you can take a poll of the office like we talked about earlier. Wouldn't be scalable, and also wouldn't give you the best solution that's gonna give that equation like you talked about, cost per real estate, for employees, so on and so forth. So we're gonna pass it off to Chris Drish for the same topic. Oh, sorry, skipped Chris Hobson, go for it.
I mean, honestly, I think Rags said almost exactly what I wanted to say. I mean, we've seen everyone doing a whole mix of things, from staying fully remote to 5 days back in to, come in when you want, at least it's X number of days. So I mean, I think really, right, it's about what's best for your company and your employees. The company is going to know how they need to work together. Do you need to have different teams together at the same time? Do you need everyone all in the office? It's gonna be a mix. It's gonna be based on the employer and the company and the employees. And I think, right, our role is to have technology available to them that's going to fit their needs. So whether that's 5 days a week in the office or hot desking 2 days a week in the office, the technology can be flexible. It should be flexible with what all three of us do, honestly, to be useful for any of those use cases. So I think it's just about us, matching what our customers' needs and then customizing to that.
Yep, agreed. Chris, sorry about that. But last but not least, Chris Drish, if you want to close it out for us.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think another thing that I've seen in terms of like trends and what companies are looking to do with returning employees and things like that is they're really focusing on the workplace experiences, whether it's coordinated, social events, and other things in the office that helps kind of, again, drive the adoption of employees coming back into the office several days a week, or at least, 1 day a week where there's, kind of a social event or something that they can gather around. So I think we're going to see organizations continue to try to ramp up those types of workplace experiences that, again, on top of the technologies and the different things that they're trying and testing and looking to implement, I think they're going to look to incentivize employees through those types of experiences to drive, again, not only people coming into the office, but actually enjoying coming into the office. So that's also another trend that we've seen with a number of customers.
Yeah, and on that topic of enjoyment, I know it's not today's topic, but even something as simple as food, getting to the office, making sure all the accommodations are done at cost, but also still a really enjoyable experience. And that's kind of like what all the solutions are trying to solve for. Well, I appreciate the responses. So before we open up to Q&A, because we're at that time, I'd like to thank you all for your time today. Sorry for the couple slip-ups there. But Envoy is a workplace platform in collaboration with all of our technology partners, offer a stronger solution to the market and tie those experiences together. So you have the booking of employees. When you walk into your space, you have your locker, you know where your desk is at. And behind the scenes, you have the sensors that are tracking to make sure that you're getting the utilization out of the experience. And as you can see, not one company can do everything. And that's why it's important to have integrations like these to tie those products together to create that experience, because ultimately together you are saving money and making it more cost effective to have the employees. So with that, I will kick it off to Q&A. Oh, and one quick reminder, this webinar will be made available on demand and will be sent by email if there are any questions about that. So it looks like we only have one question in the Q&A right now, so I will read that off. How do you temper the desire from senior staff to ask for one-on-one training for all staff in deploying Envoy versus providing an introduction email and providing resources as needing? We have launched in a dozen locations and haven't had any issues thanks to your intuitive interface. Well, I guess that is an Envoy question, so I will take that one. When it comes to, I would say, small or large deployments of Envoy, ultimately, we have teams that can aid in that, but we look at kind of what type of business it is, who's involved in the rollout plan, and also what level of proficiency certain stakeholders are. Like sometimes IT can roll out, and not just Envoy, but all of these products that we're talking about. Sometimes it's a smaller office and it's a front desk admin who maybe doesn't have a technical background but wants to get these products off the ground. So you just want to make sure you know who your audience is, and then that way you can curtail that experience for those experiences. In some cases, we do a one-to-many training of staff that are using our product, as well as employees, depending on the company size. But really, I wouldn't say there's one size that fits all. It's more about what's going to make it easiest to get the initial lift off the ground, because once you start using the products, you kind of see the cohesiveness and they're more self-serve once you're familiar. Any other questions that anyone has out there? Silence is golden. Well, again, I really appreciate all three of you jumping on today, and for all the attendees as well. This will be available offline, and I hope you all have a pleasant Tuesday.
Thanks, Brent. Thanks to the Envoy team.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Brent.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.